When New York City summer temperatures hit the mid-90s and humidity comes on full force, it is miserable, even life-threatening, to be on the street for an extended period of time.
Don't be a baby, T-bag. It ain't that hot.
Not that hot! When this guy woke up this morning, he was white!
I couldn't help but wonder why a homeless person would remain outdoors instead of heading to a shelter. I felt compelled to ask a woman who was camped out on a Brooklyn sidewalk that question, since there's a women-only shelter just a few blocks away. She had her possessions arrayed around her in the meager shade of a shuttered newsstand outside CTown and was open to talking. She told me she left the shelter because she didn't feel safe, there were too many fights, and she was bullied. And so she ended up on 9th Street and Park Slope. This was right before the heat wave started, but it was still very hot out. The woman told me she just had to hang on just a few more days because she was on a list for an apartment. I have no way of knowing if that was true or not. I gave her some money, and while we were talking, another passerby gave her food and water, and she blessed us both repeatedly. When I went back a day later, she was gone. With NYC's increasingly extreme summers and winters, the question seems obvious: how can I rest easy in my comfortable apartment when there are people sleeping on the pavement? A heat wave means code red. NYC has an extensive protocol that goes into place during a heat wave called Code Red. There's a similar plan that goes into effect during freezing temperatures, Code Blue. A Department of Social Services spokesperson told me that during extreme weather conditions, outreach teams redouble their canvassing efforts across all 5 boroughs. The goal is to engage New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness and encourage them to come inside off the streets and connect with city resources. Those include cooling and drop-in centers. As part of our Code Red efforts during this heat wave, DHS and our provider partner outreach teams are equipped with necessary supplies and continue to be out there around the clock, conducting enhanced efforts throughout and ensuring we are prioritizing the health and safety of some of our most vulnerable New Yorkers, the spokesperson said. Highest level of homelessness. According to the Coalition for the Homeless, homelessness in NYC has reached the highest level since the Great Depression. In April 2024, 132,057 people slept each night in NYC shelters. The organization says thousands sleep unsheltered in public spaces. An exact number is impossible to determine. However, the record increase in the shelter census is primarily driven by the more than 200,000 asylum seekers who have come through NYC's intake system since spring 2022, according to DSS. Recent arrivals are not typically eligible for rental subsidies, so the city is providing emergency transitional housing. If you factor out the asylum population, the number of New Yorkers seeking shelter is 7% below the pre-pandemic peak. The primary cause of homelessness is very straightforward: the lack of affordable housing. An analysis by McKinsey Company for the Regional Plan Association identified a shortage of 540,000 housing units for the tri-state region. City of Yes. A housing development plan from Mayor Eric Adams calls for building more housing in every NYC neighborhood, but it is likely to face fierce opposition. I see this duality in my reporting and in my conversations with friends and neighbors. New Yorkers understand there is a housing crisis. They experience the high cost of housing themselves. But the majority do not want more affordable housing, which needs density to make it financially feasible. Developers say built on their block, because that would require zoning changes to allow for bigger buildings. Few seem to be in favor because of the impact it will have on the character of their neighborhood, or because more housing will make parking more difficult or take up seats in their neighborhood schools. These are the concerns. And plans to create housing shelters draw even more vociferous opposition. Homeless Coalition's Senior Director of Crisis Services, Lindsay Davis, believes the city can do more in terms of informing the unsheltered of where they can find access to water and cooling centers in the most extreme weather, telling New York Metro that she herself has had clients who have suffered in the heat wave. No one should be needing to beg for water. People should easily know where they can get those kinds of needs met. We have definitely had clients who have come in asking for assistance in getting access to a cool space, Davis said. We have had a client who collapsed on a subway platform, and she only found out about it after someone called 911 and was taken to the hospital. Davis also suggested that agencies like the Department of Social Services, DSS, should do more to distribute water to the homeless. Those with have gone through homelessness also shared just how difficult life can be for those living in the street during summer in the city, something that will only grow worse amid climate change. The richest people are destroying our planet for fossil fuels, and this heat is only going to get worse here and worldwide, and it's the poorest people who will suffer the most. The poorest countries will suffer the most, and the poorest countries will suffer the most, and the poorest Americans here in this country will suffer the most. Formerly homeless East Villager Johnny Grima told New York Metro, "Homeless people can't just go inside to get cool. Most of the stores and restaurants don't want homeless people sitting inside, and the public libraries and other cooling centers aren't adequate." With rough sleepers suffering from a 1-2 punch of extreme heat and ignorance of their status, advocates charge that the city is responsible for ensuring vulnerable New Yorkers are kept safe during the dangerous conditions. The Legal Aid Society told New York Metro that the city should step up outreach efforts for those who remain outdoors while ensuring up-to-date air conditioning is installed at shelters. It's imperative that the city make efforts to protect both New Yorkers who are street homeless or residing in shelter from extreme heat. This includes outreach to New Yorkers who are on the street, in subway stations, or other public places to ensure their safety, as well as accommodations in shelter for New Yorkers who are vulnerable to heat-related illnesses. This is why we support measures to install air conditioning at all shelters, as these extreme temperatures are unfortunately our new normal and here to stay. A spokesperson for the Legal Aid Society said, "The majority of street homeless New Yorkers have told New York Metro that they refuse the shelter system due to violence and thefts they say occur within their walls." Encampment sweeps during the Adams administration has also left many street homeless wary of taking up offers to reside in city shelters. Homeless survivor turned advocate Shams Debaran told New York Metro that he remembers all too well what it was like to endure blazing temperatures, stating that the Big Apple needs an improved shelter system and even more housing. "As someone who spent countless summers on the streets, I know firsthand the deadly dangers of extreme heat for the homeless. It's not just winter that's dangerous. Summer's scorching temperatures can be equally life-threatening. The heat can leave you disoriented, dehydrated, and dangerously weak," Debaran said. "We need more housing, improved shelters, and expanded safe havens to protect our vulnerable populations. I'm working closely with Mayor Adams and his administration to address these issues." In response to the call from the homeless and advocates, the DSS and Department for Homeless Services (DHS) say they have already ramped up outreach services during days of extreme heat, calling it a comprehensive and repeated effort to make contact with the vulnerable population. The DSS also say they distribute water and other items. "Ensuring the health and safety of vulnerable New Yorkers is our top priority. During extreme weather conditions, our outreach teams redouble their 24/7 efforts across all 5 boroughs, implementing best practices and the latest health guidance as they engage New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness, connecting them to vital city resources to help seek respite from the heat, including cooling centers, DHS drop-in centers, shelter services, and other critical supports." A DHS spokesperson said, "As part of our Code Red efforts during this heat wave, DHS and our provider partner outreach teams are equipped with necessary supplies and continue to be out there around the clock, conducting enhanced efforts throughout and ensuring we are prioritizing the health and safety of some of our most vulnerable New Yorkers. Should any New Yorker see an individual who appears to be experiencing homelessness and need outdoors in extreme heat weather conditions, they should call 311. An outreach team will be dispatched to help." Some homeless advocates are attacking New York City Mayor Eric Adams' homelessness policies. At a rally outside City Hall Thursday, they said they were particularly concerned more homeless encampment sweeps are coming. NYC sheltered more than 86,000 unhoused people Wednesday night, excluding approximately 60,000 in the separate migrant shelter system. The protest groups, including the Coalition for the Homeless, Safety Net Project, Urban Justice Center, Vocal New York, Open Hearts Initiative, and WIN, fear the mayor will become more aggressive in sweeping homeless encampments from the streets and rousing those sleeping on the subways now that the Supreme Court has made it legal. Adams has repeatedly said he will not tolerate encampments, calling them inhumane. The Adams administration is reaching record numbers of housing insecure New Yorkers through CityFEPs and cash assistance. Having led the city through significant reforms and investments to improve the city's homelessness services system, we've increased housing placements from shelter by 20% year over year. Despite the lowest housing vacancy rate since the 1960s, many of the recommendations shared today are outdated or extremely costly, while doing little to improve the administration's $3.9 billion investment in the Department of Homeless Services this fiscal year, or our record $26 billion commitment to affordable housing in our current 10-year capital plan.